you know, the name of the title of the TED Talk is Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. And, you know, to me, that means, you know, like to what you were saying, Samira, like stepping past your boundaries of what you know, what you've done before, and what you're capable of even. Is like stepping beyond that. And it's like, it's uncomfortable to pick up a tattoo gun and put something permanent on someone's skin. It's uncomfortable to, you know, to put yourself out there with your art or your music. Brian's a weightlifter. It's uncomfortable to, you know, squat 400 pounds. But when you do these things, when you step outside of your comfort zone, that's really when you see a lot of growth. So I was wondering if anyone wants to share maybe like a time when they stepped outside of their comfort zone, and just, I mean, kind of like short story versions, and when, like how that, what transpired because of that. Like how she said, when you knock over one domino, then the other ones start to fall. Like Martin was saying, when you're living in your truth, then all the pieces start to kind of fall in place. I would love to hear some of y'all's stories about that. I know Samira kind of gave us a little bit of one of hers. Would anybody else like to share?
I will, Anthony. When I had a successful real estate career, every year I was making $15,000 more, and I was finally getting into a place where I was grooving. People knew me. I had a good reputation. I was part of the Atlanta Board of Realtors, and then the 2008 crash hit, and I was like, really? And then it was a lot of work. I mean, I was working midnights, and it was just like, oh my God. And I said, you know, I'm just going to push through. I'm going to make this happen. I don't care. Like, you know, I can create my own reality. And then deal after deal after deal was ridiculous, and it kept falling through. And I said, okay, I surrender. Like, screw this. If this kind of thing can happen, then I'm just going to do what I want to do and live, you know, a life for me. Like, I'm not going to work for money. I'm going to work for me, and then the money will come. So luckily I'm a saver, and I spent 2 years educating myself and starting a career, and then did spiritual stuff full time, and I do full-time healing and everything like that. And it's not that things have gone perfectly, and you know, it was hard starting my own business again. But everything eventually happened, and you know, here I am 10 years later, living on purpose, in alignment, like you were saying, Samira, you know, doing what I was meant to do, that's true to myself, or my gifts. I listened to my gifts, and my gifts led me into where I am today. And that I live authentic. I'm not having to try hard. I still have to grow in different ways and develop my own business, you know, like grow my business. And there's always the pushing edge, because I get into a comfortable place, and now I'm going to do more group programs, and I got to do this, and I got to get out more. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it. But every time I do step out, magical things happen. So
I think you bring up an interesting point there. Like, I think a lot of people see, you know, it's by nature, we see like fear as a bad thing, but I don't think it necessarily is a bad thing. So if we can retrain ourselves to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, being comfortable with like stepping through fear, and then checking ourselves. I think like the ultimate, like, you know, you're in the right place is like when things start to align, when you read something or do something that brings you just to the right place, or that just echoed what you just heard, or like, you know that this is all aligning up, then you know that, okay, like I may be working through fear, but the fear isn't dangerous. The fear is just an obstacle for me to overcome, which is what you just said, Ursula. You know, you were working through the fear, but you were in alignment, and you knew you were in alignment. And that's when you're like, this fear is a safe fear to work through. Which all fear is probably safe to work through, but yeah.
No, it's not. The design of fear is something's not right, you know, check, check, check. So, you know, the saber-toothed tiger's coming, like, and then fear is actually energetically a ball of energy. And it's scary because it's powerful. So when we're like, oh my God, this is scary, it's powerful, you know, we get scared and we either shrink, or the fear says, come on, come on. And then we're like, okay. So that's, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because that made me think of that.
I like what you're saying, Sarah. Something popped into my head that I heard from a friend, and Brian will appreciate this one for sure, is that resistance is the multiplier. So in a lot of scenarios, you know, fear is that resistance. Fear is what's stopping you, or what's pushing back against your, you know, your forward motion. It's like you're afraid of, you know, releasing this album, so you don't move forward and release it or something like that, you know. Whereas, you know, taking that, like you said, and using it and working through it can be your multiplier. Like fear can be actually what multiplies your ability. So like Ursula was saying, it's like, do you shrink and you're afraid, or do you like buckle up and grab your spear and like fight for your life? You know, it's like, we're not quite in that, you know, animalistic survival mode anymore, but you know, fear definitely does come from a point of like, am I safe? It's like it's an animalistic reaction to like to keep us safe, you know what I mean? Which safety kind of equals comfort zone, right?
I have a question about that, or really just a statement. Like, how often do we in our average life feel fear about the present? I often find that a lot of like my potential fears, or, you know, kind of involving like what you said about the album, is, you know, contemplating either the past or the future of, you know, maybe I won't get the type of recognition that I desired from putting my art out there or myself out there, and I create fear prior to actually performing the action. It's usually a premeditated thing for me. I don't know if anyone else feels that.
Oh, same way, man. Same way. I completely understand that. Yeah.
So I'm reading, this is super interesting, in alignment. I'm reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle right now, and it's just some really great concepts. I mean, it talks about how being in the now, like, is where all beauty, where all joy, where all like a portal of life and being exists, you know? And when you are anxious, or when you are fearful, or where all these, like, you are tied to your past and, well, it's always been this way, is like these negative emotions come out of existing in the future or in the past, you know? And so if you were just to exist in the now, like, what problem do you have? And a problem's of the mind, you know, it's not actually happening. What problem do you have that is right here in this very moment? Like, none, you know? So that's a really interesting point, that fear comes from either the future or the past, but it is never of the now, which is like our sacred holy moment of being.
My partner, or my girlfriend, she's reading a book called The Untethered Soul, and it discusses a lot of it's a lot about the voice inside your, and how we often think of the voice inside our head as us, and the voice sometimes speaks fear or judgment, criticism, etc., which takes us out of being present in that moment, and we get full of all these very conscious thoughts, exactly how to be in that moment, and we often get stuck inside that voice inside our head. And it's a really interesting book, because it's like, I guess, about untraining your mind to be, you know, an untethered soul.
Yeah, with regards to both those books that you guys mentioned, there's one that I read called I Am Me, I Am Free, or Robots of Freedom. And the author mentions Okay, like you said, Sarah, if we're always thinking about the past, well, that's already gone. The future, it's not here yet. So with the past, he mentioned that there's three things that hold us back, that keep us trapped in the past. Those are fear, guilt, and resentment. So whenever we are feeling of fear, guilt, and resentment, it's kind of got us locked up in the past. So basically, try to write yourself a list of what those things are. At least that's what I did while I was reading, to kind of have a better perspective of my own past and what was keeping me trapped in the past when my thoughts went there. And try to make amends with it. Try to figure out why it's holding you back. Try to learn the lesson from it so you can move on and, leave it again in the past, because those lessons are to be learned so you can make better decisions in the future. They don't have to hold you in the past all the time. And I'm going to look up those 2 books. They sound great. So thanks for that.
Sweet.
Another great book that is for me, when I first read it, it was as if a hand came out from the middle of the book and would slap me. And it's by Pema Chodron, and it's called Comfortable with Uncertainty.
There's something that just sparked is and that's a whole nother topic. I don't really want to go into that today. It could be, and I think it will be, a community conversation in the future, but it's just the human needs, the basic 6, I think it's 6 human needs. And it's interesting because like uncertainty is actually a human need, which you wouldn't think so, but it kind of is. And so I don't want to delve too much on that. That's going to be a little bit off topic. But with someone, okay, let's see. One thing that for me really stuck out with this talk, and with the timing of where we are in the consciousness, like the ascension process that all of us know is happening, is the speaking up and hoping, like speaking out when you feel like you should be quiet, or speaking up when you feel like you might lose something for it, or like when she wrote that article and she knew that like she was speaking up about how men were paid and compensated and their travel was taken care of for a conference. White women were were their travel was taken care of, and then Black women had to pay their way and pay to speak at this conference. And so she wrote an article about it, and then it was one of the hardest moments for her ever to push send on that article. And when she stepped away, and then she just stepped away, she came back a few hours later, and to this whole thing of like, thank you so much for saying this. I'm so glad that somebody finally brought light to this. It was a viral post, and there's a lot of things, in our current, fields that have, where someone like was that domino, like the Me Too movement, or, Black Lives Matter is very prevalent right now, where people are speaking out against injustice when they've been silenced for hundreds of years. So I kind of like to take the conversation in that direction of, she used the quote multiple times of speaking truth to power. And I really like that as a concept. And so Brian's got his hand up. Let me, take it away, Brian.
No, sorry. This is my first time using Zoom, everyone. So there we go. It's fine. I'm just pushing buttons over here. Continue, sir. Don't mind me.
So I was wondering if anyone had any shares maybe of like a time where you spoke up and it felt really empowering, or something cool happened, or maybe even the converse of that, a time when you were quiet and you feel like you should have said something, and how that kind of like, what track that puts you on, either whether you spoke up or you did.
Actually, I have a good one. Yeah, when I was about 19, 20, I was gonna be a tattoo artist, and I really was striving to be that. I really wanted to be that, and was gonna apprentice under my old tattoo artist. And the shop owner, I showed him my work and everything in order to start the apprenticeship, and he looked at me dead in my face after looking over a few of my pieces and was like, "We don't hire cartoon artists." And it really like hit me hard because I'm like, well, I thought all art was art. So I didn't really think of the difference between that and everything. And no matter what, you can always get better. So I just, but I didn't say anything and shut my mouth and ended up just doing my construction career and doing that whole process. And until now, I really haven't gotten the bravery to actually step forward and go past the fear and everything. And yeah, it's been 8-10 years now, so I've been 12 13 years now that I could have been a tattoo artist, but now
Now he just did this yesterday.
yeah.
Wow.
It's a beautiful
Yeah.
piece. I'm so proud.
Amazing.
So yeah, move past your fears. That's number one thing.
So what's kind of your main takeaway from not speaking up?
That it's a regret, and you don't want to have regrets in your life, and you want to be able to live life to the fullest, really, and I wasn't. And I thought I was. I thought I, was going to start my own company. I did start my own company and everything and did my own construction company. And I had to learn pretty much the same things that I could have just did with tattooing, which that was my real goal, my real essence. So, and yeah, you definitely need to use every moment in your life to the fullest potential, because without that, you lose, in the long term, you lose it. And, so.
Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
I have a couple of things I could say on that. And not speaking up, there's kind of two ways. Growing up a minority in the South, I didn't really stick up for myself when people would make very sly racist jokes and comments. And there was a very big loss of identity that really came into my front view when I was older, and I really didn't have a strong sense of self, and realized that a lot of my habits and interests weren't really my own. They were a desire to fit in a place where I didn't feel like I fit in. And I had to really relearn to trust and love myself. And then on another note, I often would not tell certain friends the truth, or not necessarily lie to them, but when you're upset and you don't necessarily want someone asks you what's wrong, you're like, oh, nothing's wrong. When something they potentially did is the reason why you're wrong, and you want to assess the situation later. But someone really put into my head and made me become aware of the fact that I'm creating a false reality for those friends in which they feel a sense of comfort, and they feel as though everything's okay. And then they're blindsided later when I go, okay, everything wasn't okay. This is actually what I was going through, and things of that nature. And that really made me start speaking my truth on a higher level, where I wanted everything to be very upfront, straight, and open, and to not be creating this soft cushion for people and then taking it away at the last moment before they hit the ground. And that was very transformative for me. And in terms of sticking up for myself and speaking my truth, being in a business that happens, being in an herbal business and being a minority and having to really utilize, really stick up for myself in a business that is comprised of herbs native to my culture and other cultures I'm affiliated with, but not really broadcasted by them. I often have to really put myself in the same field as a lot of like Caucasian business owners that have more money than I do and have more reputation than I do, and more trust with the general public. And that's been an uphill battle. And on top of the fact that there's a lot of misinformation out there about several herbal products because people are in pursuit of profit and having to go against the grain and speak truth, even though you might make less sales or less people might be interested because they're not cure-alls, they're not the pharmaceutical pill that's going to take care of them instantaneously. That's been an uphill battle, but it's been very uplifting because I'm speaking my truth and I'm educating people who have been misinformed.
It's beautiful.
Awesome. And Martin is crushing it right now, y'all. Definitely check out Roseman's Remedies. It's got all sorts of cool stuff to plug. Just gonna plug that real quick.
Can you write it in the chat, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's put those books in there if someone else wants to drop your book recommendations and stuff in the chat. Yeah. Okay, awesome.
Anthony, can you tell everybody how to do the chat and everything like that? Because not everyone's familiar.
Oh, yeah. I'm on a computer. There's a little button that says chat, and it'll pull up a window. I think there's a button that says chat on the phone. I'm not. Do you see that button, Brian?
Yeah, if you
Found
click
it.
there's a more button. And if you click the more button, it'll say chat.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, found it.
Sweet. So I really want to kind of continue down this path of the silence, and because she said something at the very beginning. Let me find my notes. Is that the systems that are in place for society, in America particularly, and the people who have the power or whatever, they kind of rely on our silence and our compliance. And I feel like this is something, this is something that, the hippies, in the 60s, they started speaking out and they started rebelling against the system. And now, we're seeing this in so many different ways. Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, people being frustrated with the political system, people being frustrated. I mean, it's like most people just want to live and love, like be with their family and do something that they enjoy. But systematic oppression is real. People are struggling financially everywhere in the world, especially in our country. The wealth gap is just growing and growing. And so this community, all of you guys, I feel really strongly that you got that we together have some really fantastic ideas about how we can, break that silence. So where, I don't know, does anybody have any shares or maybe any ideas about how we can do better moving forward? Or
You can go.
No, please.
A big thing for me is, I'm not a huge fan of capitalism, but I do own a business, and because we're so far in the system of capitalism, and I discussed this with Rachel yesterday, without pure anarchy, it's hard to really go back on that. Right now we have order somewhat, but I think a big thing is putting our dollar where our mouth is and creating more circular economies, taking away the finances from the corporations that are increasing their wealth gap, and really going out on a limb to support local artists, local businesses, you know, local artisans, because their money is going to go back into the community in which you live, and that's going to actually like move you forward. When we're supporting Walmarts and Targets, you know, there's unfortunately some things that we have to go there for, especially depending upon our finances. But if we made it a point to really focus more locally, then we would create a lot more monumental change. Because when a person has the ability to not worry about where their next meal is coming from, that's when they're truly getting their zone of genius, where they're truly going to perform and do the arts, do the hobbies that they put to the side, because they're so focused on getting financially situated. But they're forced to acclimate or acquiesce to certain jobs that they don't want to. You know, I remember hearing that what's his name, the owner, Elon Musk, mentioned that a lot of people who have the brains to be like engineers and to move us forward technologically or mechanically are getting desk jobs as lawyers and businesses and at banks, because it's comfortable. They're using their intelligence and going for comfort because they know that it's going to make them more financially off, but they're sacrificing huge parts of themselves. And we're in this very big step. We're in like a slow zone of like development because everybody's focused on scarcity. And we often, like, you know, in being a business owner, and I'm sure you guys as artists have noticed and have felt, when you put something out there, but it doesn't really get, it doesn't sell immediately, and or you really have to convince even like some people that you are close with that your product and your art is equal to and worth the money of another company's item that they've already kind of become acclimated with. And the importance of, if you know, if they go out on a limb to support you, that in the future you're going to be able to support them. You know, that's a step that we all need to pursue and move forward in, because we get to really see the value of our dollar when we're helping the people in our community. We see how that person can go from struggling to a millionaire one day.
I love that. There's a couple points you brought up in your share just there, Martin. Like the vote with your dollar, I think is a fantastic way to speak up, you know, about whatever you believe in. You know, it's really like Rachel's got some great stories about that, you know, and this year in art camp where she's feeding the kids different food than they always used to get Chick-fil-A, but Rachel doesn't align with the values of Chick-fil-A. And so she no longer does Chick-fil-A, but all the kids are like, wait, what? I love Chick-fil-A. It's my favorite. Even the parents are like, why aren't you going to Chick-fil-A? And Rachel's like, this is America. We can all have different views, and that's totally fine. That's what's great about this country. But I choose to vote with my dollar and not support them. So she's gone with a different restaurant. So yeah, and definitely supporting small businesses. You know, the other point you mentioned is the circular economy. You know, I see this trend where it's like we spend into corporations and then it goes into CEOs' bank accounts and then we never see that money again. You know, it just kind of like goes out of circulation. And the circular economy concept is like, you know, it kind of goes back to the more communal aspect of our tribal, you know, state of living, where you lived in the village and everyone had their certain expertise. There's the medicine man or the medicine woman and the shaman and the warriors and the farmers and the mothers. And, you know, there were all the different like roles that each people had, and they each fed each other with those roles. And in that sense, there wasn't money exchange so much as there was goods. But, you know, like you're saying, Martin, being in a capital economy, it's kind of like, how do we get ourselves out of this hole that we've dug ourselves in? So that was really great. Thanks for
I think we like money shouldn't be as important as it is, but that's what the current system understands. And until they recognize they're not the ones getting the money anymore, they're gonna keep pushing forth that mindset and like that separation and that financial gap. And by taking the thing they care about most away from them and putting it in our hands, we will regain the power. You know, our communities will regain power, become communal again.
Did you want to share something on that note, Ursula? You're muted.
It's a huge shift right now, and there's so many layers to it. I have a talk called The Elevator Theory, and it's about what level of consciousness are we on that we're looking at an issue. So money is the paradigm, right? It's the story. Like, you know, you live in, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So the whole money thing has been set up and we all buy into it, you know, pun intended. A lot of young people are saying, okay, let's not do this anymore. Let's do systems of barter. Let's do communal living. Like Anthony, you did a reference to the 1960s. We are now recycling back. So sometimes, you know, when you start a project, like Samira was talking about her art, you start something and then you're like, oh, I don't know. And then you start again and then you do it again. And then it finally takes off like a baby trying to walk. So in the 1960s, that was the initiation of what we're doing now. So that's an excellent reference musically as well. Like if we start listening to the lyrics and seeing the feel and the vibe of what was going on in the 1960s, looking at the news and what was actually happening in the 1960s is going to give us a clue as to the direction. Because if we know where they are and we know where we are, then we can look and see where we're going. So I think if we continue to have these conversations and think outside of the box that we were born in or placed in, then we can start creating different boxes to live in or out of, and just go in with what's organic, like we were saying earlier about, you know, what's inside here that needs to come out, and follow that, because all of our answers are inside. Part of the paradigm that's breaking down is our references. All these stimulations and have to and could and corporate and all of that stuff, those things are falling away. So now it's our opportunity to stop with the distractions and look within and find out what's really true there.
Yeah, the word.
I love that mention of references. That's a really good way to put it. Like our frame of reference is the phrase, right? So our frame of reference around money or about speaking up or about how to live or whatever is really shifting. Like it feels like the camera's being wobbled like this right now, but you know, it's like we're just putting on a new lens or something like that.
Yeah.
Mary,
Yeah.
what you got?
I studied politics because I saw things that I disagreed with growing up, and I thought that would be, my mom always told me to do things right, so I thought that would be the right way to go about it, and I might be able to do a change. However, all the jobs are super corrupt, so I decided to go a different direction. But after I graduated, and the more I went into rabbit holes and found out more information, I wanted everyone to know. So I would tell everybody, and I would be spewing this information, but I realized I was accidentally taking over people's sacred space. And my mom she made a comment one day. She said, that's just, you know, if someone doesn't really want to listen and is not interested in the information, you're just wasting time, energy, and saliva. And I thought that was, you know, it really gave me a better perspective into what I was doing. So I changed my methods, and ever since I use baby spoon feed information to people, you know, and I'm taking the opportunity that I have a studio now, and I get people, you know, in pretty much on a daily basis. And I use those moments as moments to share information, whether it be about health, whether it be about the system, whether it be how we can, you know, do things better or work on ourselves internally, and information in regards to self-love, which, you know, sadly it's not something taught out there, but you have to like go read, research, and figure out, you know, and then it's like, oh yeah, why doesn't anyone ever teach this, you know? So I use those moments to give information. And I'll do it in very light ways. I'll just bring little sparks up if I see that someone gets curious, if I see that it sparks their imagination and their questions, they'll start asking me questions. They'll ask me for more questions, and they'll ask me for more information. And I see then which ones are ready to go further with what aspects of the information. And then the conversations get really exciting and back and forth, and you grow a lot from it mutually. So I think, I know you mentioned, Anthony, about we're silenced a lot, and that's one of the issues. We are having so many issues. So I wanted to share that that's how I've been kind of going around that, so that I don't force people into the information, but I give them just enough to test who's ready for more, so we can work together and more people will know.
Awesome. I love that. I love that reference of, or that you highlighting the little moments aspect, the single conversations, because, you know, it would be pretty easy to watch that talk and think that, you know, well, I got to speak truth to power, and I got to be loud, and I got to like cause a ruckus. I need a microphone. I need to go stand in the street and yell, you know, for whatever, like speak up. Like, yes, that is a completely valid way to do that. And, you know, having a single conversation with just one person and opening a door that they never knew existed, or they had never wandered through, or having even an internal conversation. You know, it all starts inside, right? We said that, a couple people said that throughout this conversation. So it's like having that internal conversation, you know, not silencing your intuition. And, you know, like, okay, now we bring this outside in the world and smaller things. And then the bigger and bigger, you know, the more and more we grow in community, the bigger platforms we're kind of gifted in order to share messages. So that's a really great way. I think starting small makes it less overwhelming, you know, and it's just that one conversation.
It's snowball. That was it. Sorry.
Social media has been really you know, it's a place for comparison, and people who have these really good ideas and dreams of social change put on their social media, and maybe they see that this one account has 1,500 followers and has very, you know, similar content as them, similar ideas as them, but, you know, not many people might be responding to their content that they want to be responding to their content. And that, you know, they get a little, they get upset about that. You know, they start comparing themselves to the other person, and they don't always notice that on a more macro level or micro level, that their brother, their sister, their mother, their cousin, their friend, their friend's friend is actually actively listening to them, actively making changes in their life, for whether it be for health or their spirituality or their financial, and they're making these shifts based upon your expression. And that, you know, we sometimes look too big at the macro view. Like, even with politics, we look so much towards like the federal government that we overlook our local government and the actual like daily change we could be making, rather than the like yearly change that could happen. And I being, you know, 25, I've definitely experienced a emotional wave from social media, from comparing myself and, you know, being on that like first brink of MySpace, Facebook, and everything, and having to really separate myself from being important there, and really placing importance on what I'm doing in my life and like what I'm doing on an everyday basis to affect those around me. And, you know, you don't always have to be the person with that large following. You can be the person affecting the person who's going to have that large following, you know, like creating that domino effect. You could be planting the seeds for other trees to grow and potentially larger than you, but they're still growing with the same type of momentum and energy that you're putting forward.
I've got to sign off. I very much enjoyed everybody's company in this discussion. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Hi, Ursula.
Bye.
Yeah, I think, Martin, I love that you brought it kind of the focus a little bit towards social media, because that's so much how people consume information now, and news and everything. You know, it's just like, it's on our phones, it's on our computers, it's like the constant like source sort of that people are, you know, it's how we're being fed art, it's how we're being fed news, it's how we're being fed, you know, like keeping up with our friends and family and stuff. So glad that you bring that up. And I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but maybe when you know, it's like, even if only one person, like, what about the domino, going back to the domino, what about the domino effect of you sharing something that affects one person? And then how does that affect that one person, and how does it continue on from there? You know, there's, you know, that domino effect doesn't, you don't have to have 15,000 followers to have a domino effect. You could just share your heart, share your true self once, and then someone reads it, and then they're like, wow, someone else feels this way. And then they're, you know, whatever, right? So thanks for bringing that to the fore there, Martin. Appreciate that. We've got a bunch of cool book recommendations in the we need to start I'm gonna start a Vibe Hive book recommendation document thing that we can like all be a part of and add to and stuff, because there's like already 10 books on here or more, I think.
I'm going to speak to the first one, the first couple that I put on there. I haven't said much because I'm just listening a lot, but that first book, Crucial Conversations by Al Switzler, really changed my life productively. I mean, I can say that with full confidence, because it just really helped me. If you're one of those people that has trouble with, you know, confrontation, or you have issues like talking to people about really serious things, or if you're like me and you get kind of heated and you get emotional about things, and you get, especially about the topic that you really feel passionate about, that book will really help you kind of stay logical and think about things in a way that will keep you calm and talking from your frontal cortex instead of the back of your brain, your bird brain. So that really helps. And then the second book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. That's a really, really good one I read a long time ago that just kind of helps you, like, through all of this, you know, if you're trying to talk to someone or trying to elevate, you know, their thought process or get them on the same page, it really dives into how to do that in a way where it doesn't look like you're manipulating them, or you don't have, you know, it shows that you don't have another agenda. So just wanted to speak on those.
Thanks, dude. Sorry, y'all. I got still recording. I think we're still live on Facebook. Had a little glitch there. Awesome. So, okay. So talking about speaking up, I think we've got some really good takeaways so far. Vote with your dollar, internal dialogue, you know, having small conversations. How else can we speak up? How else can we put truth to power and kind of stand in our place? And what other ideas do you guys have?
If I could speak up and say again, she's kind of, you know, it's easy to talk about being a certain way or doing a certain thing, or like believing in certain things and trying to, I don't know, transmit a certain way of thinking, but it's much more powerful to live and actually do those things and lead by example. And I have a quote on my phone. It's like, leaders, the best leaders are the ones that lead by example, not by force. And so if I don't know, if you want to be a powerful, peaceful person, do the things and live those, you know, live those actions, do those things every day, or at least try to. It's hard to. definitely hard to be consistently, moving in the right direction all the time. It's easy to get distracted, social media, this, that, and the other, but just my little.
Thanks.
Well, I have about the leadership. I think it's by like John Maxwell, and he says, I guess the true strength of a leader is shown in their ability not to find the perfect position for themselves, but like the perfect position for others. And when the other people around you are living into their highest potential, then that abundance truly is shared with you all.
Cool.
Can you hear me, Anthony?
Yeah. There he
Hi,
is.
everyone. In terms of speaking up and just like having those uncomfortable conversations, it's something that my wife and I have been doing a lot lately. Like we've really found like an opportunity to do that, and the main way that we've been kind of sharing information is by not condemning them just for having a different opinion. Like it's easy to, like, we have some dear friends who we had the talk of like systemic oppression is super real, but they're, for better or for worse, like they're really privileged white people who've never not lived in privilege around other privileged white people. Like they're incredibly kind. They'd give anyone the shirt off their back. But we had two separate conversations, and on the first conversation, I wasn't there, and my wife ended up getting really heated because she knows that this stuff is real. We have friends who we've watched go through it versus our other friends that just haven't. And the second conversation, we approached it differently together of what if their experience is just as real to them, even if it is closed-minded, even if it's not their fault. It's really easy to condemn people for their own experience, and then because we condemn them, we treat them as wrong, and we attack them with our information instead of trying to hear their side of the story and gently add some information to their story, right? Instead of kind of rewriting it, we try and erase all of their story and throw in our story. And it seems to be working really well for us, is rather than saying, look, you're a crazy person, how could you possibly think this or this or this? We've really taken to just, all right, I totally understand why you would feel that way. You're not even a bad person for feeling that way. Can you maybe see that there are other ways of going through this life having the same experience as you? This exists, which is true, but it's not productive. Saying, wow, that's amazing that you feel that way. Like, let me tell you a story of someone I know who has a different experience, or how my own personal experience is different, or rather than trying to immediately share that they're wrong, has been something that has helped both my wife and I grow in our own conversations, and it's helped us kind of weather the storm through the really difficult conversations. People you love, whether they're gonna have difference when it comes to some of the things like systemic oppression.
Did we lose him? Can you guys hear him, or is it just me? Okay.
Hey guys, it was a pleasure to be with you, but I'm in a second meeting, so I gotta go. But next time I will talk more. And thank you everybody for being here tonight. I have another group here waiting for me, and we're gonna step in right now to have another conversation. All right, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Good night.
Carlos.
See you soon. All right.
Okay, so when Gavin comes back, we'll kind of let him wrap, because I really liked where he was going with that. Oh wait. Must be in a dead zone. You there, Gavin? Okay, we'll come back to him in a second, but real quickly, Gavin, we lost you. Like, I don't know.
But I can hear you.
So I think, you know, Gavin, really, thank you for sharing that, especially in the light of systematic oppression, because there's some, like, we all live in bubbles of like, you know, this is our little friendship bubble of pretty conscious, forward-thinking, you know, thinker-doer type people who are like following their heart, living their passion, you know? So even this is definitely a bubble, like, that absolutely exists, you know? And, but everyone is also in their own little bubble. So it's like, when you pop someone's bubble, that's like really rude. Like, that's not very nice, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's more like meeting people where they're at, I think, is a really great way to kind of summarize what Gavin is saying there. Is like, you know, okay, this is, and then like understanding and appreciating their world, like meeting them where they're at, understanding and appreciating their world, and then asking questions. I think that's probably like the 1, 2, 3 of how, you know, we can start to have these more difficult conversations with people who maybe don't even know that another perspective exists. You know, like Gavin was mentioning, you know, it's not that these friends that he was talking to are bad people. They're not bad people. They've just been conditioned, and they've just been raised in privilege. And, you know, whatever that is, it's like, we don't want to like say, well, your life is wrong because you lived in privilege. I mean, that was just how they grew up. But it's like meeting them where they're at, and then, you know, kind of moving on to like, yeah, I'm gonna write that down in the that was cool. I missed the second point, darn it. Everyone was asking questions. Cool. Well, Gavin dropped out, unfortunately, but I'm glad that he spoke up and shared there. How you guys feeling? We've been at it. We're just about an hour of the conversation. I mean, I'm happy to keep this going. I've got some more notes, and I love all y'all. So definitely down to keep rolling if you guys are.
So I'm about to have to drop, but
Okay.
I do want to say, I mean, I think something that I really took away from this is like just how powerful and important it is to be your authentic self, and to figure that out. Like, who are you as a person? And that takes a lot of reflection, a lot of other experiences, and then to stay true to that. And by doing that, I think you have a better chance of lifting everybody up outside you, or bases, you know. Like, take one point of that and like, you're elevating here, well, everybody around you starts to elevate as well, you know. And so by you figuring out your authentic self and by being your authentic self and not letting the fear of what if and staying in the now and being that, I think that really works wonders. So I think that was a helpful takeaway for me. So
Yeah, that was really interesting what she said in the TED Talk, how it took her 9 years to say that she was a writer. So it was, you know, and it was like, it took her 9 years to own her purpose.
yeah.
Like fully embody that. So you're definitely,
And it's also like, that's also super encouraging, right? Like,
yeah,
maybe it takes 9 years. Like, it doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't have to be today. You know, maybe it's always a journey, you know, and you're not going to be like, well, I made it. I'm here. Like, this is it, right? Like, your life doesn't stop until it stops. And you should always be growing and evolving and being uncomfortable. Like, growth comes from being uncomfortable. So, like, continue that being uncomfortable and not letting fear stop you and owning where you are when you're there. Yeah.
right on.
Thank you guys. I've got to drop, but this has been a really great conversation. I appreciate everybody's inputs. You guys' light. It's been beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to drop as well, but I really liked how Sarah ended hers because, you know, you really don't reach the finish line until you're dead. You know, that's the only finish line you really have in life. You're always moving forward. I was listening to another book. I don't really know what book it is. I was listening to it with my girlfriend, but it left me with a really nice affirmation, and I want to express it to you guys as well before I leave. And what the affirmation was I am constantly expanding my circle of abundance and positivity. I feel like there was another one along the same adjectives, but I really liked that specific affirmation because when I was thinking about the term expanding and thinking about and visualizing it, you know, when you're expanding, you're affecting those around you. And so when you're expanding your own circle of influence and abundance, prosperity, then those around you are also going to be pulled into that. And I think that's one of the most important things you can do as a person is want to uplift those around you and yourself.
Yeah, I think that's something to remember, you know, because there's like this counterculture to like speaking out and being an activist and stuff where it's like, if you're not marching in the streets, then you're not doing anything. Or, you know, whereas it's like, whoa, bro, like pump the brakes. Like I'm at home, like doing my meditations and like developing myself as an individual, you know, and having the internal dialogue first, you know? And so, like you said, you know, that making those steps towards, you know, growing yourself, like Sarah said, like you raising your consciousness, it raises other people around you. You know, you guys are both kind of saying the same thing. You know, I think it's good to know that we have something available to us that we have complete control over, because there's so much in life that we have no control over. So to have something like taking our own, you know, growth and development into our own hands is empowering, you know, and it's a start, and it's where all of this has to start. You know, this movement or all these movements, they have to start with someone realizing that that didn't align with their truth. Like you had shared earlier, Martin, like you didn't, because of, you know, this mold that you were kind of just fit into, like you didn't develop your sense of identity. And then you're like, wait a minute, hold up, like there's some dissonance here. And then, you know, you started to speak up and develop more into you, and look at you now, you're crushing it. So
I fully appreciate that. And I really appreciate you for inviting me on this call. And I'm glad that I had the time for it. And I thank all of you for the words of wisdom and positive energy that have been imbued in this entire and beautiful conversation.
awesome. Thanks, Martin.
Right.
All right, Rosie, I saw Rosie joined. Rosie, would you like to kind of share any thoughts? Or I know you've been kind of listening for a minute. if you want to talk about the actual TED Talk, if there's anything particular you want to share, or if there's, you know, anything that we've been kind of talking about with everyone else's shares, if there's anything that kind of sparked, do you want to chime in over there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I've gathered, I know I jumped in sort of late, but I've gathered some key points that y'all have said. And I agree that it is about tuning in, going inward, and finding your authentic self and being able to stand in your truth among other people who may have different opinions. And therefore, you're able to subconsciously raise other people's consciousness through that. Even if they see a different point of view in the time being.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Definitely agree.
And The Power of Now was very life-changing. I read it, I guess, in the beginning of quarantine. And I know a lot of people, including myself, have lived in the past or anxious about the future. But I feel as if we focus on what's in front of us right now and tune into what's happening in our lives right now, we're able to see patterns, we're able to just see things from more of what they are now and tune into that and gain more abundance and prosperity through that.
Yeah, I love that it keeps coming back to that, because earlier in the conversation before you joined, Rosie, we talked about how fear isn't usually a now thing. That doesn't mean it's never a now thing, but it's usually, it can sometimes be like, I'm fearful for this thing in the future, or I'm fearful because this is the way things used to be in the past. You know, being in the present's a really cool way to kind of do that. There's something else that came up, but I lost it. We'll come back. Beach.
Yeah, I feel like some past experiences and stuff can make us fearful of what's going on now, or we can operate out of thoughts that have happened in the past. And that's why I think it's important to tune inwards and really focus on what's going on now, what is my heart condition now, and not focus. I get that our past experiences have shaped who we are today, but not to hold on and cling to that identity always.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something else you mentioned earlier was you said something maybe about like decisions, and that kind of sparked something within me. And it's like, life is just a series of decisions. So one way that we can speak up and speak truth to power in every single moment is by being conscious of our decisions, being aware of what choices we have, and then consciously picking, like whatever our next step or our next, action or our next, thought or whatever is going to be. It's like being aware that at any moment in any given scenario, we have two choices, or we have more or infinite choices, and like being aware of those decisions and then making them consciously, I think is a really, Brian mentioned earlier how, doing is, or I can't remember exactly how you said it, Brian, but it's like where action is greater than words, I think is kind of what you were alluding to. So it's like with each decision we make, that's an act of doing in itself, is a decision. Whether, even if it's an internal, like, I'm not going to think this way, or, I actually love myself, or whatever, like that's still an action, even though it's an internal, like, mental thing. So yeah, what you got? You're muted. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think Samira was about to share.
Oh, sorry. I was mute.
Oh, it's okay. We're about to head out here for tomorrow and get everything ready, and I have to draw a lot still. But it was amazing. I do have one quote that had to do with what Mark was saying. The quote is, "A candle loses by lighting another candle." I think conversation that's kind of in where you don't lose of your own fire by lighting other fires. So just, keep sharing love and inspiring people and doing your best to, keep spreading that.
Cool. Well, thank you both for coming on and sharing. I'm super proud of you both. You guys are rocking it.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Can't wait to see you guys.
Yeah, we missed you guys.
I know, it's been too long. We need to make a trip. We need to make a trip to Florida soon.
Woohoo.
Nice.
Let me know and I'll block off my schedule.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.
Love y'all. Yeah.
Yes.
Love. See ya.
Okay. So there's 3 of us left. There's one other thing I wanted to mention. Let me check my notes here.
I'm just going to put another book in the chat real quick.
Yeah, definitely.
What she was saying. This one's really good while you're thinking about that topic. I just started reading it. It's one of Becca's books. It's really interesting on how your unconscious mind rules your behavior and it influences your decisions and things that you do. And that includes influencing your beliefs. And so this is something that is really crucial to learning, to trying to understand is, what the unconscious mind is and subconscious mind is, and like how it influences us when we don't even really know it. So this is something, I know it's just us 3, and hopefully people will look back at the chat and look later at another book, but this one's really good for learning more about yourself in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to take all the book recommendations and I'm seriously going to start like a Vibe Hive book recommendation document. It's going to be great.
Perfect.
So kind of the last kind of like closing statements I wanted to share. Let me just make sure. I love how she closed her thing saying, telling truths to build bridges. Speaking truth to power, especially when it's difficult. And then also her 3 points of, like her 3, I wish that we had this conversation when there were more people like kind of joined in, because I loved her like check to like, should I say this or not? Was, did you mean it? Can you defend it? And did you say it with love? And if the answer is yes to all 3 of those questions, then hit go, hit send, let it out, let it fly. I think maybe kind of a follow-up to this question is like, what other checks and balances, are there? Because that's a really good way to kind of test that. But, and the other thing that we didn't really, we've touched on, but we didn't really say explicitly was that you mentioned in the talk was just how being who you are is the domino. It doesn't take some courageous act of jumping out of an airplane to be a domino. It could just be, getting up out of bed, like for real. So I've got one last little thing that I want to close on, but do either of you have any final thoughts here to share before we sign off?
Not really. It's just really good to listen to a really good conversation. And I know the only thing that really contributed mostly was books, but if one person that saw the chat read it and it makes any sort of difference, then that's all I can hope for. But I appreciate you inviting me to the talk today, man. It's been really good.
Yeah, dude, I'm really glad you joined. And like kind of like we've been saying, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to make a difference, and you did share like 10 books or something, so that's great. So, Rosie, unless you have anything else you want to add, comments? We'll go ahead and close it out, but one of the favorite, this is community conversations, and like I said at the beginning, we'll be doing this consistently, at least once a month, and depending on the success of it, I think, especially in these times where having like community is difficult because we can't gather like we used to. You can't be around people as much like physically, so it's important to create community in other ways, and talking about these difficult things and learning and growing together is a really fantastic way to do that. So we're really excited about these community conversations. We're really grateful for everyone who tuned in. And one of the last things that I kind of want to just close this on, because it's absolutely relevant to the community conversation aspect, is that that she said in the TED Talk there was that well-being is a community business. So, well-being falls on all of us in the community, helping each other out, doing our own work, speaking out against injustice, even when it's difficult. And that's absolutely what the world needs right now. So with that, I'll go ahead and kind of sign off, but I appreciate you guys so much for being on here. This was super fun, super healthy. We are just at about an hour and 20 minutes of actual discussion, so go team, go. Rah, rah, rah. I'm going to go ahead and end the Facebook Live. Thank you if you're on Facebook for tuning in, and Facebook will see you later.